Good time of the day, everyone. Looking at the room, it's very clear that you all find the idea of Entra Suite a very fascinating idea. My name is Igor Sakhnov, and I'm a corporate vice president in Microsoft Security Organization. And that's my day job. I make sure that the right people have the right access to the right resources. I also make sure that the wrong people don't get access to the right resources. My night job is a deputy CISO, and I look at making sure that our organization operates as secure as it gets. As you might guess, I never get bored, and only sometimes I get to sleep. So, good job from the other room. So today, we are going to go and talk about what I get asked all the time. AI is coming. When are we going to see the changes? When are we going to see the improvements? And how is the workforce going to be protected with all of the AI challenges that are fast on the tracks? And we are going to talk about the landscape. We are going to see how we stay ahead of the security challenges that AI brings to us. So 3 parts of the discussions today. Landscape, kind of mentioned it already. We are going to talk about how do we go and secure access across everything we can do. Second, we are going to have Carmichael come on the stage and talk about how Microsoft leverages Entra Suite to go and keep ourselves secure. And finally, we are going to have Kaitlin to come on stage and do some wonderful demos on what Entra Suite brings to the table, especially with the all biggest new announcements we did at the Ignite. But first, let's talk about the landscape. AI is quickly changing how we are operating. What I could have only dreamed last year, my engineering team is actually doing right now on the daily basis. It is becoming reality. The other reality is that it's not just my engineering team or your defenders, it's also our threat actors that are actively leveraging AI. We observe that phishing attacks are becoming significantly more efficient. By our estimate, it's about 4.5 times efficient. We observe a lot of automations into the intrusion vectors done with the AI. And I also hear from lots of security leaders that they observe significant increase in the incidents due to the in-depth usage of AI within their enterprises. So that's nice, not so nice. For us, defenders, it becomes even more challenging. We live in the seriously partitioned world where in most of the organizations, you're going to see multiple identity systems. You're going to see multiple network access control systems. And what's funnier or sad, from multiple vendors. The only common thing is multiple. And when that happens, you're going to get the gaps. You're going to be getting the gaps in protection that attackers are going to be weaponizing. So the result, when identity and network access do not work with each other, your visibility drops, and your risks skyrocket. It's not theoretical. What we observe at our platform is 100 trillion security events every day. Not a month, not a week, every day. We prevent 4.5 malware attacks every day. We observe 38 million identity protection signals every day. So it's not surprising that the organizations that have highest partitioning of the enterprise observe the highest number of the breaches. It is just a reality. At the end of the day, to secure your enterprise in this AI age, it's not about bringing more tools. It's about breaking the silos between identity and network access control and removing those gaps that are easily attacked. This is what Entra Suite is about. This is what we bring to the table. And our vision is very simple and very powerful. It's to give a secure access to everyone, everywhere. To get there, we need to go and expand on what our security foundation is. For years, we talked about the trust fabric. Nowadays, we need to go and expand it to the access fabric. And access fabric is identity and network access working together, sharing signals, amplifying each other's strengths. This is where identity brings the identity context into the picture, a network access continuously verifies and proves the trustworthiness of this session. Imagine, you come to work, you need to create a sales report. You need to use the highly confidential data for this. You go and open that workbook. It's in the morning, half an hour later, you need coffee. You go downstairs to the friendly coffee shop to get the coffee and to use the Wi-Fi, which is a public Wi-Fi in the coffee shop. If you don't have a strong access fabric, what you're going to have is you're going to expose potentially your confidential data over the public Wi-Fi. You all are aware what public Wi-Fis are for, right? This is where the strong access fabric comes in and dynamically and adaptively adjust the session controls, what you can and cannot do in the particular time. And when you go back to the office, you get to the full usability of this workbook. That's the power of the access fabric. And you should just think about that as the dynamic safety net. Simply put, foundation of the security is in the access fabric. And that's what drives the zero trust forward. Entra Suite is a very strong tool that allows you to get to the zero trust faster. There is a lot on this slide. The concepts are very simple. It's about any identity, be it user, be it service principal, having access to all of the resources, be it, again, SaaS application, your web application, or AI tool across all of the environments, corporate network, public internet. At the heart of the Entra Suite, literally in the middle of the slide, is what we call unified zero trust policy engine. This is identity protection and conditional access coming together and being expanded by Entra Suite to execute continuously with the help of continuous access evaluation. We call it CAE. You might ask, what is so important about CAE? You all probably are security professionals. You know how authentication works, be it Entra or any other IDP. You take all of the signals, you take the user control, you process, and if you are successful, you get a token. And the token probably is valid for hour plus. Remember the coffee shop, half an hour? You essentially go and expose your secure data to potential unfriendly local hackers. That is the challenge, and this is why Entra Suite execute policies continuously. This is why it takes identity network access controls all into the picture. This is essentially the unified policy engine that gives you a single pane of glass with a single set of policies. And it removes the fragmentation of the environment that you currently live in. The main power that Entra Suite brings to you here is the security and assurance for your workforce, that it can go and execute in the secure way at all times, not just at authentication time. We announced Entra Suite, I believe, about summertime of last year. And since then, we had a good number of customers who adopted it and took it on the journey of the zero trust. And the key point here is to understand that it's a journey. You never flip such a system from on and off system. It takes time. It takes effort. So today, we are going to have one of our own come and talk about how Microsoft had done it and what is the journey for Microsoft. Carmichael, please join me on the stage.
Thanks, Igor. I know it's weird being Microsoft and a customer, but as Igor knows, we get to choose the things we get to do, and Entra has been a wild ride that we've been on. I started at Microsoft 10 years ago, and my journey was to work on migrating ourselves first up into the cloud, so getting into Azure Active Directory back then, right? To do that, that was the initial shift of moving from Office 365, or from on-prem Exchange to Office 365. That then opened a bunch of doors for us. It opened doors to start doing MFA enforcement, where we started with Office first to MFA that, and then we moved over the years to enforcing MFA on all of our properties. That got us to then being able to enroll all of our devices. So now I could actually drive enrollment with conditional access enforcement to actually get the devices to be enrolled into Entra. which then allows me to then put on the CAE, the conditional access enforcement, continuous access enforcement policies. So we do things like, making sure the operating system is up to date with patches, making sure that we have the threat protection, including Defender for Endpoint, deployed out, making sure that we have the devices are healthy and reporting in. Once we then started doing all of the MFA, and by the way, this is, like I said, 10 years at the start of the journey. Then about 3 years after that, we started our Zero Trust journey. That's when we started calling things Zero Trust. And as the architect for that internally, it was, how do I get things like phish-resistant credentials into place? We learned over time that things like MFA fatigue was real. I had an example of an engineer in a leadership meeting say that he has 30 prompts a day on his Authenticator app, and he just kept clicking OK every time it popped up, right? That's the right way to do it, isn't it? Right? No, it's not the right way to do it. So how do we then change that? So our idea was to introduce first physical tokens and have something like a YubiKey that would then be leveraged for that. But as we looked at it, we went back to the Entra team and said, there's probably a better thing, this new thing called passkey. How do we get passkey involved into this? So now, as of today, all of our users, brand new, start at Microsoft, day 0, you go through the TAP process, you do identity proofing, and you enroll, you get a passkey onto your device, registered, not managed, and now you could access all the resources you need to access without ever knowing that you have a password on the back end. For those in the room that are from Microsoft and have been here for a while, you probably remembered you had a password. There still is an underlying password. I'll be completely honest and clear. But we rotate that now. You don't know what it is. You never have to know what it is. Because for the most part, things like Windows Hello for Business are doing your password for you, the pinned authentication when you log into your laptop. It's also the MFA and the passkey authentication, right? You also have your mobile phone where you're registering your passkey. That becomes your authentication. As a backup, you have Authenticator app to do the challenge and response if you need that for some reason. You can also, for a lot of our admin workflows, switch over to a YubiKey to manage those workflows, or if you need that for your regular accounts, you could do that as well. So that's our journey so far on just the identity side of things to getting to phish-resistant credentials. But if I roll back a little bit again, and I say, well, we started moving everything up to the cloud, and I was thinking about this, and my good friend Ashish in the front row, I'm going to call his name out and embarrass him a little bit. I remember as we were migrating all of our workloads up, we were on split tunnel VPN, and we started looking at, okay, what traffic is going where? It took us a while to actually get that, because if you're a VPN nerd like I am, or a networking person, you know all you really had was IP from source and destination and a port that didn't really tell you much of anything. So we had to build a custom database to tell us what the things were, start identifying, and start shoving them up to the cloud. And I was going all the way back to this little tool we used to call Azure App Proxy, and using that to migrate all of our web traffic, 80 and 443 traffic up. And I called Ashish's name out because I remember talking to him back then, I won't say how long ago it was, and saying, wouldn't it be awesome if I could get all my other traffic? And I remember it was a little while later that he gave me this little alpha agent, and I installed it on my machine to start playing around with it, and that became Secure Service Edge, right? So that's the benefit of being a customer 0 inside of Microsoft. I could walk over to that team and say, hey, let's try to do something cool and innovative and figure out how we can actually make this work. And today we are so close to actually having the internet access for M365 deployed out to all of our clients' endpoints and mobile devices. And I say so close because we have our challenges, because we are at scale, a few 100,000 users and even more devices, because everybody at Microsoft has to have at least 2, if not 5 devices, And it becomes this challenge of us trying to scale this out and scale the solution out. And I think that's been a fun ride that we've been on. And so we're almost like, I think this month we should be done with our full rollout of the GSA client to all of our endpoints, with Secure Service Edge servicing our internet access for M365. We've got a few 10,000+ users on private access testing that out as a VPN replacement, and I love it. It's been night and day. We have a split tunnel VPN, but a while ago we decided to go to manual VPN, so every 24 hours I have to reset my VPN tunnel. That kind of was good, especially as an engineer with workflows where you might need that dedicated tunnel. So we started migrating folks over to the private access to be able to do that for us. And that includes things like SharePoint sites, our engineering documentation websites, things like that, not just the apps that they're going to, but a lot of the other stuff. It includes things like Azure resources that we put behind what was originally VPN behind that to get them off of public IP space into private access. So that includes that whole area that we're doing with the private access rollout. And then as we start moving forward, actually, somewhere in here in the middle, we've actually also started doing the identity governance. We took out SailPoint a few years ago and said we need to start doing something differently. And so moving away from that into identity governance, using things like privilege management identities and the whole enterprise identity governance suite has been really great from an access package perspective, being able to have teams create the packages that they need to give access when they need access, and not just everybody jumping into Forefront Identity Manager FIM and just saying, here, I'm going to go create a new security group that nobody knows about, that all of a sudden has access to everything, right? So the identity governance has been a great rollout. And I think just to kind of conclude our journey, I know Kaitlin and Igor are going to talk a little bit about a lot of the new stuff that's coming. And I will tell you, when they told me a while back about these agent identities, that was a game changer for me. We focused so much in the last 6-7 years on human accounts. I always had this backlog item on non-human accounts. And I was talking to somebody the other day about how many different types of non-human accounts we have. And just think about this, throwing an agent into that bundle of non-human accounts and trying to distinguish what workload is doing what thing. Now I can actually have an actual agent identity that can be treated as a human account, included into my work that I do with all the rest of my human accounts. So give it the access it needs, have the continuous evaluation on it, and only allow it through the network tunnels I want it to allow it through. That's a game changer for me. I didn't even ask for that, by the way. that was something they came and said, guess what, we're going to go do this. And I was like, yes, please, when can we have it? So thank you, Igor, for that. I appreciate the time talking to you all, and let us know afterwards if you have any questions. So, but thank you.
Thank you, Carmichael. It's very exciting. It's also very humbling to see such a large company like Microsoft, and probably most advanced technology company, to go and adopt your toolset. Adopt it to go and make my life secure, my life streamlined, and actually help Michael as well. So Michael talked about new innovation in agent identity. It would have been my #1 favorite feature, but it's not, for a very simple reason. I'll put Ashish guy on the spot again as our Chief Innovation Officer, as we call him. The #1 feature that I believe is the most impactful is what we are bringing with Entra Suite as a secure web plus AI gateway. It's industry first. We are bringing identity context into full Suite implementation, and we are bringing AI there as well. And why is it important? Because it goes and gives you real-time, always-on protection against the prompt injection. It gives the content filtering. And in my DCSA role, what's most important, it gives me the deep observability into the AI and shadow AI, which is more important, in my opinion, than the governed AI. It's an absolutely critical point and part of our access fabric, because it does give us the continuous, always-on protection across all applications, across all AI applications, not just blast-enabled applications. That's not the only feature. There are quite a few new announcements. This Ignite is probably the largest announcement Ignite for Entra and Entra Suite in terms of number of the features. And for us, for Entra Suite, they're all tied to very core patterns, very core buckets. Think about that as driving least privilege. That's the pattern that all of you probably are very well aware of. Providing the access to the AI in the secure way, or modernizing access to all applications, because I bet all of you sit on thousands and thousands of applications that you need to go and modernize one way or another. So now it is a showtime. And we are going to see 3 demos. During these demos, we are going to follow the guy called Louis, who is a newly promoted director of sales in the company called 𝗲𝗲. And we're going to see how Entra Suite is helping Louis and helping 𝗲𝗲 to stay secure across this time. To help me with this, I'm going to ask Kaitlin to join us on the stage. So Kaitlin, Louis, essentially a new employee in the new role, probably needs to have access to the new resources, right?
Absolutely. So hey everybody, I'm Kaitlin. I work in marketing at Entra. And we absolutely want to help Louis be secure. In fact, we want Louis to make sure that he has the right access at the right time in the right way, right? That's the idea, which is basically least privileged access. So let me show you how the Microsoft Entra Suite makes this possible. So as Igor just mentioned, Louis works at 𝗲𝗲, and he just got a new job. Now he's the director of sales, and one of his first tasks is to complete a quarterly sales report. So to do so, he wants to use ChatGPT. But when he goes to access it, he doesn't have access. Now, Luis knows that access requests to his company are managed through the My Access portal. So he opens up the portal, goes to the access packages, finds the one he needs, and then he needs to file a request. Basically, that just means completing the justification. Right? Why do I need this access? And then he submits the request. And that gets automatically routed to his manager, who's Mona. So now let's look at Mona's point of view. So Mona also uses the My Access portal not just to file her own requests, but also to review her employees' requests and approve them. In this case, she approves Luis's request, and then she thinks of some other access that Luis is going to need as he ramps in his job. So she can use a new feature that we just announced called OBO, or on behalf of, which lets Mona request access for people on her team. In this case, Mona knows that Luis is going to need access to tools like SAP, so she files that OBO request for him. And in this case, since Mona is both the requester and Luis's manager, meaning she's going to be the approver, Luis just automatically gets that access. And another exciting update I wanted to mention, by the way, if Mona ever wants to review Luis's access or anybody else on her team, she can do it with the recently released user-centric access reviews. So in addition to like the app-centric reviews and the resource-centric reviews that we've had, reviewers can now look at the business-critical resources, like apps or groups or teams, that a user has access to, and then make access decisions at that per-user level. And now if we go back to Luis's screen, you'll see that he has access to ChatGPT. And since we've looked at the user side, it's really good to take a minute and say, well, what did it take to implement these controls? So now let's flip and look at the admin side. How did 𝗲𝗲 admins configure user-centric access reviews? So for this, we're going to start in the Entra admin portal. And we're going to start by going into ID governance and then selecting access reviews. And here you can see all the reviews that already exist within 𝗲𝗲. What we're going to do is we're actually going to create a new access review. So when you get there, you'll see that there's two templates. There's a resource-centric access review that focuses on reviewing access to a single resource. Oops. Looks like it may have crashed. So let's hang on a second and we'll get back. I gotta recover.
Some technical problems. Happens with all of the software, especially Microsoft from time to time.
Somebody told me that I was dressed like a leprechaun today, and that I would have good luck, but apparently not.
But I also told you that you are our favorite leprechaun.
I mean, they're a pretty short list. Okay. Okay, now let's see if we flip back. I'm just going to hit buttons until it works.
It works.
OK, I hit some buttons, and it worked. OK, so this, what we were saying is basically there's two types of access reviews, right? You've got the resource-centric reviews, and then you can do a user-centric review. So what we're showing here now is how do you configure that user-centric access review. So once you pick user-centric access review, you have to configure some basics, right? You got to name the review. You got to choose the users and scope. And for this case, we're going to use the 𝗲𝗲 sales team. Then we need to pick that catalog that contains those business-critical applications that we want access to. And for what we saw earlier, and this one, we're going to set it up for SAP's IAG resources. Then you need to pick who's going to do the review, right? So this usually is the manager of the users. And then you need to set your review cadence. And you kind of want to find a balance of, like, how are we not going to overwhelm the reviewers? How are we not going to have to create, fatigue? but how are we going to also still validate access regularly? So we're going to pick quarterly, and that seems to be a good balance. And then another thing, which is one of my favorite little buttons, is there's this little checkbox here called user-to-group affiliation. And what it does is it uses AI to recommend whether access should be approved or denied. And the way it does is it looks at peers of that user. What do they have access to? How are they using it? And then makes that recommendation. Now, the last thing to do is to pick who's going to, like, what is the process if Mona, for example, doesn't actually complete her review, right? You can let the access stand, you can revoke the access, or you could actually have AI automatically apply the recommendations that we just looked at on behalf of Mona. And that's it. So that's how you create a user-centric access review that gives you full visibility into all the business-critical apps that a user can access. One more thing, too. So now that we've looked at user-centric access reviews, I want to touch on another actually really cool feature in the Entra Suite called risk-based approvals. So what this does is it brings together identity governance, identity protection risk scores, and Purview insider risk management. Basically, it's another layer in the access fabric, right? How do we help ensure a safety net that people who have elevated risks are prevented from accessing highly sensitive resources? So for this one, we're back in that identity governance tab. And we're going to click on entitlements management. And then there's a button called control configurations. And on the right, you'll see this new window for risk-based approvals. If you click on view settings, you'll see that there's two options. You can require approvals for users that have insider risk. And then you can require approvals for users with ID protection risk. And this includes user and sign-in risk. And if either one of these is configured, basically what it does is it inserts a mandatory approval step before it routes that standard access package request approval to the manager. And this basically goes to an admin who can look at why is that risk signal elevated and what do we need to do about it. And that's it. So now I've got a couple more tools in the toolbox to help make sure that only the right people have the right access at the right time. Back to you, Igor.
Thank you, Kaitlin. What you guys saw was the power of Entra Suite on solving one of the core scenarios. Driving least privilege pattern is, from my deputy CISA job, one of the most important aspects. It's just important to make sure that, as you saw, users can go and get the streamlined access to the resources and permissions when they need it at the least possible amount of the permissions. That the manager can either go and look at the particular employee or do it at the user group and employee group level. Because we all know how much any organization evolves over time. And you really do not want to have standing privileges. You really want to have least privileges across everyone. And the risk feature, that's just so cool because it brings you right in time additional friction when the friction is needed. Now, as a security leader, I'm happy with Louis, least privilege achieved. He has his AI Explorer and his AI favorite tool. And as we all know, at least I mentioned that, hopefully you remember, AI can go both ways. It can help and accelerate. It can also go and introduce additional security challenges. So how does Entra Suite help Louis and 𝗲𝗲 with AI in the picture?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same idea, right? Access fabric. Only now we're going to apply it to AI. So let's take a look. So now that Luis has access to ChatGPT, he wants to use it to analyze some customer data and to update that sales report that we mentioned. So he goes to upload the report, and automatically it gets blocked. And that's because network file filtering with Purview automatically scans the file for sensitive content. In this case, it saw the customer data, right? It saw the PII, so it blocked the upload. This is one way to help ensure safe AI adoption without accidental data leakage, especially to public tools like ChatGPT. And now that Luis saw that message and he realizes, hey, I better not exfiltrate data, he goes to 𝗲𝗲 Assistant, which is the internal AI tool, and uses that to complete the analysis. And now that that's done, his next step is to use that information to update that sales report. This is a sales report that's done every quarter. His predecessor completed it last quarter, but obviously left and went to a competitor. So now that's Luis's turn. His first step is to have the doc summarized. So he copies it into the 𝗲𝗲 Assistant and asks it to summarize the doc for him. And once he does that, hit submit, you'll see right down the bottom, the prompt was blocked. Right? It's not allowed to perform that action. Microsoft's Entra Suite Secure Web and AI Gateway detected a hidden threat. Right, one that Luis didn't know about, didn't see, and it blocked it before it could reach the AI model. So if we dig in a little bit, we'll see that the command was blocked for security reasons, and the security reason is that, unbeknownst to Luis, the previous director who went to a competitor actually left a hidden prompt injection in the document. In this case, it was some malicious instructions that were embedded in the text and basically were designed for data exfiltration. Right? They were supposed to take the sales information as that report got updated and send it to the new employer, aka a competitor of 𝗲𝗲. Now this is just text in a document, so Luis is able to remove it, and he's able to complete his report without risking data loss. Next step. Well, now Luis wants to create some cool visualizations, right? He's got to update the report. He's got to make it his own. And he remembers this really cool connector that specializes in generating kind of rich tables and dashboards and charts. And like most employees would, Luis just assumes it's harmless, right? It's just another analytics tool. He doesn't really realize that it's actually unsanctioned and it poses a risk to exfiltrate data. So as soon as Luis tries to connect that connector, it gets blocked, right? The tool detects an unsanctioned MCP server and prevents data exposure to these external services. So throughout all these steps, Luis is guided on how to use AI safely, and 𝗲𝗲 remains protected. So now, like we did last time, let's flip and look at what was done to enable this experience. So now we're back in the Entra admin portal, and this time we're going to click on GSA, and we're going to open up a traffic forwarding. And as you can see, we're forwarding all the 𝗲𝗲 traffic to the Global Secure Access Service. And the reason we're doing this is because 𝗲𝗲 decided it lets them replace legacy VPNs, it improves security, it gives them additional visibility, and it does so with these really adaptive identity-centric controls. So we're going to go into App Insights and Analytics. And as you can see here, once the slide advances, granular visibility into all the resources that are being accessed in the organization. And here you can even filter and get specific information on Gen AI apps, right? Shadow AI. And once you can see that shadow AI, once you can see that unsanctioned usage, you can do something about it. And this is exactly what the 𝗲𝗲 admin saw and had created policies based upon it, which is what enabled Luis's experience. So let's look at that now. So again, in the portal, under Secure, now we're going to look at web content filtering policies. We want to make sure that we have the basics. We have the block policies, we have the allow policies, and we extend those to the MCP service. So now that we saw those, we're going to go look at our security profiles. Now there's two new profiles we're going to look at, and these are the two that you saw Luis engage with. The first one is a prompt injection protection policy, and this inspects the network traffic inline. Right? It doesn't require changes to the AI apps themselves, and it can block those malicious prompts before they actually reach the AI models. And this is what you saw when Luis tried to upload that report with that hidden prompt injection. The gateway intercepted the code or the text and blocked it in real time, protecting both the user and the organization. And then we've got the other policy, which is that network file filtering policy with purview. And this is the one that makes sure that all file types uploaded to AI apps are not at risk of sharing sensitive or confidential information. Right, this is a policy that we saw come into play that kept the customer PII safe when Luis tried to upload it to ChatGPT. Right, the upload was blocked, and he got that notification that said, probably shouldn't do that, can't do that. Another cool thing is that both of these have conditional access policies applied to them too. This is one of the cool ways that you can bring together identity and network access to deliver a stronger and more comprehensive set of protections. Right, so in this case, if the user has elevated risk, access can be reduced, it can be revoked. You kind of have your choice until that risk is resolved. And these protections and visibility aren't just limited to user interactions, they extend to AI agents as well. So let's real quick look at how this is captured in the GSA logs. Right, we saw in the end user demo that when Luis's AI assistant agent tried to connect to that external and unsanctioned MCP server, the AI gateway stepped in, it detected that unsanctioned connection, and it blocked it instantly, which prevented the data exposure to the unapproved service. And as you can see, it's all tracked in his logs, and those are there in case you need to do any further investigation. So what do you think, Igor?
Well, I think it's pretty cool. I hope now everyone understands why it's my favorite feature. Because it works at the network level, it doesn't require integration with your AI applications. It works for everything. I talk a lot to the CISOs. One of the top concerns for pretty much most of them is securing AI and securing shadow AI. You all know what MCP is, right? Model Context Protocol. The way I see it, it's what made the revolution of AI agents happen, because it gave AI the opportunity to act. It gave the AI the opportunity to use tools. And with that, it also brings reasonably high security challenges. It would take me 10 minutes to create an MCP server. And I don't kid you, it's that easy. If I do it in 10 minutes, can you imagine how much I thought about authorization during these 10 minutes? And then I start running it. You kind of get where I'm getting to, right? It's a reasonably slippery slope, and this is why the deep insights are so important. So let's go and look at our next demo. We talked about thousands and thousands of the applications, so we need to modernize access. But Kaitlin, one topic that I hear a lot, especially this year, there were a number of catastrophic breaches across the industry, where tech support is getting social engineered on the credential recovery. It became a pandemic of this year. I would like to see how we can go and do it with help of the Entra Suite.
Absolutely. So let's get to it. So in our last demo, we're going to go traveling with Luis. Luis is out of the country. He's abroad. He's meeting customers. And we're going to look at how the Entra Suite helps Luis access those on-prem resources he needs while he's traveling. So Luis needs to access this sales resource, and it's hosted on-prem. And the way 𝗲𝗲 has configured it, he needs a remote desktop app, and he has to use his company-managed device. But there's no VPN installed. And this is because with 𝗲𝗲's implementation, you don't need one. Luis's device is running the GSA client, which enables zero-trust network access to all resources. So Luis tries to establish a connection to the remote desktop, and he's prompted to sign into the GSA service before doing so. Once he does that, he connects to connect to the on-prem server. He's prompted to present his passkey with the Authenticator app. Now, phishing-resistant MFA, like we talked about, like passkeys, it's really important. It's essential for protecting access in today's environment. And once Luis connects, his session activity is going to be continuously monitored and protected by universal CAA, which is continuous access evaluation, which means that it's going to enforce those access policies in real time. And if for some reason there's a deviation, it can immediately revoke access to the session. So once Luis has access to his remote desktop, he's going to open My Apps portal, and then he's going to pick that internal sales dashboard. And then running in the background, right, Luis doesn't even see it, this experience is optimized by another recently released feature called Intelligent Local Access. With this, Luis gets the benefit of reduced network latency, improved network performance, and 𝗲𝗲 admins have confidence that the application traffic is kept local and that security posture is maintained. So now let's look at how this was configured in the admin center. If you remember the last demo, we routed all the user traffic to the GSA client, which gave us improved visibility and policy controls. This is also why you don't need to rely on the legacy VPNs. So let me show you how we secured that on-premise access to the sales dashboard that Luis needed. So if you look in the admin center, you'll see the file share that we're securing. And we started by applying that conditional access policy. Like we mentioned earlier, conditional access works by evaluating the context of each sign-in attempt and enforcing the appropriate policy based on the conditions that you specify. And this is strengthened by extending the signals not just to the identity level, but also to the network level as well. Then if you look under target resources, you can see that we've included the two that we talked about. There's the on-prem RDP dashboard, and then that file share that Luis needs access to. And next, we've got the grant factors, right? The rules that govern when a user is granted access. We use two, right? We required that Luis be on a compliant device, and we required that he have phishing-resistant MFA. And again, with these controls, it's how you make sure that only the right people get access to those sensitive resources, like that on-prem sales dashboard. But what happens if users have elevated risk? Previously, your risk gets elevated, and your user account will get locked down. We recently released another exciting capability with a really short and memorable name, automatic remediation across all auth methods. And this basically lets users present a passkey, right, to self-remediate without needing that admin support. So it's a risk-based access policy that covers all resources, and it makes sure that if a user has elevated risk, let's say a session gets hijacked, then the policy will automatically revoke the risky session and then prompt the user to re-auth with secure passwordless methods. And this is done completely by the end user, right? You don't need to go through a help desk. Another question we often get from admins, and apparently Igor, is what do we do if a user loses access to their passkeys and their other auth methods? Well, thankfully for me, Luis is also having a bad day, so his machine just broke. So whether your phone gets lost or your device fails, users want to know that they've got a path back to productivity, right? One that's fast, one that's not too painful. And admins want to know that that path is really secure. So another new feature that we just released is self-service account recovery with verified ID. So when Luis's device broke, and he lost access to his passkey, he got a new device. And now he needs to start that self-service account recovery process right from the logon experience. So let's see how that looks. So now Luis can recover his account even if all those auth methods are lost without needing to contact the help desk. He just needs his government ID and then a quick face check with Microsoft Entra Verified ID, and that will begin that self-service account recovery. And the process that's configured by 𝗲𝗲 basically leads Luis right through those steps. So to begin the process, Luis is asked to upload a photo of his government-issued ID. It's the official form of documentation. And then there's a third-party verification partner that's picked by 𝗲𝗲 that's going to verify this document. Right? It's going to confirm that it is a legitimate government identity. And then Luis has to complete a face check. And basically what this does is it matches that real-time selfie, that face check that he's doing, with the photo on that trusted credential. It basically verifies the match, and then it transmits the results of that match, the likelihood, 95% that it is Luis, 98% that it is Luis. That goes to 𝗲𝗲. But Luis's actual biometric information is not shared. So it protects Luis's privacy while ensuring that he's only the person that can restore that access. And as Igor mentioned, when you're in this era of rising impersonation attacks, deep fakes, knowing that it's that right person, the right Luis who's trying to gain access is more important than ever. Oh, and by the way, this feature can also be used for more than just account recovery. We're seeing a lot of organizations start to use that for transactions that require high assurance. CEOs signing something, probably want to make sure it's really the CEO. So now that we've confirmed Luis's identity, he gets a tap code, and he can use that to restore his account. So Luis can go back to that login screen, and you saw, like within minutes, right, from beginning that recovery process, his passkey's restored, he's back at work, no downtime, and no delays with help desk. So real briefly, let's look at how the scenario was configured by the 𝗲𝗲 admin team. And this one's actually really simple and quick to configure. So first, the admin is going to start by selecting the specific group or groups of people that are eligible for the account recovery. Obviously, in this case, it's Luis, so it's the 𝗲𝗲 sales team. Then you have to choose the preferred identity verification partner or partners, and you can see the full list available in the Microsoft Security Store. And again, the way this works is that selected identity verification provider confirms that trusted credential, and then Verified ID does that face check, takes that selfie, and compares that biometric information and returns that numeric value for how well the selfie matches that trusted credential. And then that threshold for acceptance is configurable by admins. So if 95 isn't enough, it can be 98, or whatever number makes sense. So by implementing the self-service recovery option, you not only protect your organization, but you also are empowering your users. Right? So just a few simple steps, and you can significantly reduce the burden for your help desk while you're enhancing overall security. Sounds like a win-win to me. What do you think, Igor?
Kaitlin, I know of at least 3 companies that would have definitely benefited this year from this capability. And I'm not joking. I literally know 3 names of the companies. These are great demos. All 3 of them show how Entra Suite help us drive least privilege and help us modernize and secure access to essentially anything. I think it's probably about time for us to wrap up, and I want to wrap up where I began. AI is quickly changing how we do things. I cannot promise you that 10x productivity gains is here, but we can see how it moves in that direction. What I can promise you that the security challenges are increasing every time. And that means we have to be ready. And to be ready means we need to bring identity network access together. It means relying on the access fabric instead of the trust fabric, where access fabric can go and spot that you have a public Wi-Fi and protect you, where access fabric can go and say that this particular user needs to have the permissions and it doesn't, and do it seamlessly. It also means modernizing connectivity for the users, like Carmichael did, and doing it with the identity context in place. With the current age of AI, what you probably all are going to see is the explosion of the number of the identities. It's just going to happen. It's already happening. And with that, securing the access is the top priority. At least from the security perspective, it is a top priority. And this is where it's absolutely important to go and bring together identity network access, or as I call it, build the access fabric. And this is what Entra Suite is for, and this is why it brings the safety net to the table. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate that all of the seats are taken. And all of us are going to be very happy to go and answer any questions. Find us either here or after the session at our booth. Thank you very much, everyone.